What's up, everybody? Aloha, Mike here with the Stand Up Magazine. Super stoked and honored. We're talking to Kristin Thomas here today. And of course, if you don't know her, which I highly doubt, she has been in the stand-up paddle world for who knows how many years, as a race director, as an organizer.
Mostly just as a plain old racer.
And as a racer, and lately she has been surfacing as the race director for ICF events, such as last year's event in Hungary, and as this year's a race director in Gdynia in Poland.
I actually wasn't the race director this time. I was in Oklahoma, but not in Poland. I was just part of the team. Competition manager.
Competition manager, great. But nevertheless, well-versed and well experienced in that field.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for being here, and thank you guys for liking and commenting on this video, because we got something interesting for you guys to unpack, something we unpacked the last few videos and over the weeks. And now that the Gdynia dust kind of has settled, we want to look a little deeper into the case that was mainly presented to me from my readers, was all triggered by the Ocean long distance race that was mildly put something of a medium disaster for some people, not for everybody, but for some people it was really disastrous, and I didn't hear the end of it. And I want to present the case here. And the case that we're having, and I had to kind of like do a little bit of a note here, is that a lot of people felt like they show up to a world championship, they come from flat water paddling backgrounds. That is really something in my region that is driving the paddle world competitively and recreationally. And these people just felt that, number one, putting a world championship into a place like this and conditions like this was really, in a sense, not fair, not ideal, whatever verbiage we want to use. And the main reason is because they feel that what's driving the participation rate in races like this, number one, they want to show up and race and be a world champion in the 40 and 50-year-old class. That is super cool for them. They want to see guys like Michael Booth and Connor Baxter and Fiona and all the big names. They want to paddle alongside with them. That is also something that excites them. But they strongly feel it's that big group of people that is the driving force behind that. And a lot of them somehow now feel alienated by the decision to have put a race into choppy ocean conditions like we've seen in here. And you've been there, you've directed this. What's your take? Want
to jump it right in and start off by saying thank you, Mike, for always bringing these topics up, because we do need to keep talking about them. It's always interesting to hear feedback. I will do my best not to get defensive, because I think they are making excellent points. But in general, we are a water sport, probably the most versatile paddle sport that's out there. So we can do this activity on almost any water, anywhere. So that attracts people from everywhere, from inland and landlocked countries. A lot of it started, we believe, in more the ocean culture. But that doesn't mean it isn't for everyone. And we've always talked about that, how it's this sport that anybody can do anywhere. So we do have a really unique issue at ICF in that we are trying to cater absolutely to, it's a world championship. We want those top paddlers. I'll have to say right off the bat, I asked a couple of them after the distance and they shrugged their shoulders like it wasn't a big deal, because we're prepared for anything in any conditions. But we also want it to be a big event, and it is open still. I don't know how long ICF will keep that going. I do not have inside information, but it is for everyone. And we did have hundreds and hundreds of people. So really good points. I think Mother Nature is the first thing I have to throw in there. Sure, we wish it wasn't that bumpy and stormy that day. And we had many, many meetings deciding, like you said, I think in your last video, you woke up to find out it was already over and wondered what the heck happened, because you saw DNSs and DNFs. We did do it in the safest part of that day. I guess the argument, I didn't get to read what your, I know you have a German magazine in print, so I'm guessing it's from some of the landlocked countries in Europe that
Indeed.
probably were giving you that feedback. We can't control weather. Cancellation, I guess, would have been a possibility, but I can tell you, we had people running up and begging us not to stop it. But instead, we were hoping and asked people to make the best decision for themselves. Sure, that's disappointing if you come from a place where you're not prepared for bumpy water. But it's funny to look at, like I looked on your Facebook page and you have this Maliko picture where this like giant wave is behind you. It wasn't anything like that, but it did have typical mixed conditions of swell and wind direction being different, which causes chaotic chop. I have to tell you, if I'm not allowed to race when I'm on the race team, on the officials team, I would have gone out there and tried it, and I'm 60. So, but I live at the ocean and I'm used to bumpy water and, might not have been successful.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was an easy solution. And then I will back up to, what is flat water? Some of the bumpiest races I've been in have been on lakes, bouncing against seawall where there's no consistency of a swell direction and of wind direction. It's just like whipped cream, peaky mess. So I don't know that you can count on ever having a flat water race. There had been some beautiful flat sunny days there on the Baltic Sea. We did, as you noted, the venue had a harbor that would have loved it to be a little bigger, but we did the best we could with sprints in that. And I think that was great. But the distance race, I'm not sure what the solution was that your readers were suggesting. Do you cancel an event or do you hold it and the people who are prepared, you hope, will choose to go out? Also, we had these ICF events you probably know, you were there last year, incredible safety, so many boats on the water. I know you noted the one boat that was floating by itself, but that's because you rescue people first and somebody wanted to be taken in, and then, boats.
Yeah, but let me interrupt you right there. Boat float, yes, but the fact that you have to rescue somebody, that's a problem. That does not speak well to this particular race.
I don't know. I think it maybe speaks to, maybe that person should have chosen not to go out. Maybe it wasn't their day. We certainly have people quit in Pacific Ocean races fairly regularly.
Yes.
Again, this was an open event, so people of all abilities could come, and people joined and gathered. It was great to see groups from countries, as teams. And so I'm sure some of them had their friends come along who maybe don't have as much experience.
Indeed. And we all get that. And we all miss the days where we were racing at the Doheny Beach Park and had high waves. But
talk about conditions. Do you know how many small injuries of stitches and broken ankles and that time that we had it at Salt Creek? You may say you like that from the spectator point of view, but boy, that was a dangerous place and one that sometimes people had to quit out of.
Yeah, that was crazy. Now,
but I loved.
we just have to acknowledge the fact that the sport has shifted away from these kind of venues. It has shifted away from that kind of skill level. We have kids coming to a place like Poland from landlocked. If you think about it, for example, a fact that I picked up from somebody I couldn't verify, but apparently Hungary has more registered active paddlers than soccer players.
Isn't that wild? Yeah, Eastern Europe, it was fascinating to learn how into paddling they are.
And these people, and this is something what I also said in Poland, is if you would have thrown like on a technical race, the half of the people that you would have thrown in the water in Poland or in Hungary on that note, if that would have been at the Doheny Beach Park at the Battle of the Paddle, they would not have made it to the first point at all. They would all have gotten washed back. So that's the thing, is that's where I'm trying, that's where this core argument is, that the amount of people that are not interested in paddling like this, they don't come from backgrounds like this, they don't have the means to go train in conditions like this, but these people are customers, they are participants, they are paying, some of them. And if we look, particularly in an event like Hungary and Poland, is like the 40 plus, actually, how competitive it is,
isn't it?
Or the 50 plus, there is like, there is not, that is just a very fascinating thing. And those are the people with the money that show up to these kind of races. Those are the people with certain professional backgrounds, and some of them come out of canoe sports and pick that up now. And those people, they don't want to paddle in this. They want to have a clean, slated, flat water lake race.
Well, I hear you, and I hear that. And I think, like you said, last year, ICF World Championships were on a lake in Balaton. It was actually quite windy and choppy also for the distance race. Weather is not controlled. I completely understand where these people are coming from, but they knew where they were going. The race was in Poland on the Baltic Sea, on a beach. Perhaps not known for big waves, and it certainly didn't have the kind of waves that we would have seen. We keep referring to Battle the Paddle, but that's a good example that a lot of people know. The type of race that you have in the downwinders or getting through waves in Hawaii is essential. At the top of our sport, you have to have ocean knowledge, even if you're from landlocked countries. You know, extraordinary Germans like Sony, bless her heart, you know, best wishes to her and her whatever's going on. But she's Canary Islands. You know, a lot of them have places that they paddled and learned. And if you didn't have wind and surf skills at the beginning of this sport, you were really, in fact, I'm super impressed with those. There are some that learned them. And I think that's amazing. Boy, more power to them. But you're right. I think the growing number inland races, that's great that's increased and the participation has increased. But I think you have to know where you're going. I mean, you say they aren't able to train on the coast, but if you're going to choose to go to a race on the coast, you might want to do some coastal paddling. Although, again, to the argument, how do you ever choose a flat water venue? To me, water is water. Mother Nature plays with us all the time. It's part of what makes our sport interesting and fascinating. It's why people love the surfing side of it. And you're a foiler and wing, and you know, you love all those conditions.
Let's bring up an example out of a rowing sport. And let's think about the facility that you have visited in Oklahoma that was solely built around paddle, rowing, whatever the disciplines are, how that is being built and how big that aspect of the paddle sport is in compared to OC1 and Molokai to Oahu, 4-man, 2-man, all these OC sports. How big are those sports and how much of a facility do these sports have in compare to where you went in Oklahoma? So there seems to be a little bit of a parallel. And I feel like the message might not have been received in its entirety here, that the rowing sport is kind of might be showing us the way, whether we like it or not. I mean, like, I'm not talking here about, this might not be reflective entirely of my own personal opinion, but the rowing sport seems to kind of show kind of like where this whole thing is going, and paddling starts to become a rowing sport. That is, for me, since Hungary, this is pretty clear. SUP is now a paddle sport.
A canoe and kayak, just to clarify a little bit, only because under ICF, it's everyone with a paddle who's facing forward. So rowing actually has its own whole thing. But Oklahoma was an Olympic training center, yes, for rowing and for canoe and kayak. It's about as close as we get to flat water, but even that, it wasn't a very long distance race, but there was wind. There's wind involved in so many of our sports. And I don't want to get into, you know, controversial topics, but I think it's becoming windier in Southern California, and weather changes seem to be turning us in the direction of more weather, not less weather. So I think it's going to be harder to find actual flat conditions. Now, the OC community, I know you mentioned with Connor in one of your videos how it's a little bit flat, but it stays and it you know, continues to have people, and it grows and has people of all ages. Well, it has really grown in, for instance, the East Coast of the US and Florida. So they are reaching out, but they are not an Olympic sport. They are a paddle sport, but they also have their own culture and their own structure and series and goals like doing crossings is one of the, the biggest things that OC. So they certainly have their personality. And although we're seeing OCs on the Midwest Paddle Series, I saw there were a lot more outriggers that looked like this year, in those inland lakes and rivers. But again, some of those races, they're tough. But a lot of those people in the Midwest who want to travel, they go down to Florida to do some ocean races to see what it's like and to spend more time in the ocean and to try to get those sea legs. So promising a flatwater race at any venue, whether it was Hungary last year, which was on a lake, or Poland this year by the ICF that was on a sea, there's no guarantee of flat. So to me, we are a water sport. We're not an ocean sport. I live in Southern California and love surfing, and the ISA, is still there too. I went and competed in their Masters division for the qualifiers, and wish people well in Puerto Rico. Is there much behind that? I don't see any other building events leading up to that one event, which I'd love to see more of. But the whole situation, and not everybody, I think it's still very confusing to people, is very strange. And overall, I'm a glass half full person. We want to make the best of this, but we still, I think we slowed down a little bit. We kind of sat there and said, oh, look, they're going to figure it out. And for a few years ago, we just kind of were waiting for the decision to see who was going to guide and grow stand-up paddling. So I think it set us back overall, the independent voice of SUP. Dare I say that? Personal opinion only. But we've also had some amazing stuff come out of it on one side or the other, but it can be quite confusing. And what is the direction? We want to include everyone. So we don't want your people who are upset about it to change.
So where are we taking this? And I think in ICF terms, they're really going off of the both ends. We're going to have the pros on one side, we want to have the amateurs on one side, and we want to bring them all together. And this is a really cool, having that kind of all inclusive. But at some point, we're wondering how much do we have to weed out the field before we go to a venue where we are saying like, okay, now the 13-year-old kid is really, that's not meant for a 13-year-old. And it's also not meant for a 55-year-old that comes from the lake that goes paddling after work. So where are we going there? Where are we taking this in terms of venues and race formats? There's going to have to be some sort of a decision.
Right.
Not that we have to make it, but
ICF has a big old rule book. You're welcome to look at it. It's public. It's on their website on the Stand Up Paddle page. You can find the link at the bottom. They do have 3 types of races. So they're somewhat defined, but they're not just one. Like a sprint is straight in ICF, and it is 250 meters or less, where a tech race can be anywhere from 800 meters to a 5K. You've had some good discussions about those longer techs and what that means. I think the APP style tends to be a sprint tech mix, a shorter race with tech. That's a different kind of sprint. And then we have, although in Oklahoma, it was an 800 meter tech race. So it really was a sprint tech race. And when you have heats and, what they do and how ICF stays on time, you have to have that all planned out. Distance has a big range also. So you're right. We haven't decided exactly what they are. But again, the ocean versus lake, it's water. And we trying to find a venue that will host something like this and be able to do the type of production that we saw and put in the money takes a lot.
Yes.
To my knowledge, ICF, I know they were talking to a number of countries and one of them fell through. They don't have it set for next year, but are working hard to get that set. They do have it set for the following year, though. I don't know if you knew that. Sarasota, Florida. It's in the US in 24.
Sarasota, Florida. Okay.
Henderson Park. So that takes the National Federation under ICF must bid for it, and they have that. So that's a very interesting move also in 24 and 26. Yeah, you have to look at that.
Okay.
Henderson Park. It is also Florida has so much water. I believe, I haven't been there. It's an intercoastal waterway, so I don't know. They could go out to the ocean maybe for the distance, but I'm guessing that sprint and technical races will be inside. But I know they've talked to places, New Zealand was a consideration, and Greece and Thailand, and those all are more likely to be ocean of some sort, but like the Mediterranean Sea is not as wavy, perhaps, but again, depends on the weather. I think because we're so much about community still, you mentioned it, I love the fact that we get to be together with an open race and the very top people. And I think, you know, the Euro Tour, isn't it pretty much like that? Like open?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
APP does separate a bit. They have their people that are on the circuit, and then it's usually open to others also.
I think right now they're just happy when people show up.
Yeah.
I think you and I could go paddle the APP right now.
Yeah. I actually got an invitation, which cracked me up, because in Poland they were bringing boards from Poland to London, and I said, "Oh, not here with a board, but honored you would ask." A whole
different can of worms. So let's try to conclude this here real quick. Yeah. So we somehow have to marry the flat water and the ocean. We're gonna have to marry those two a little bit. Yeah, it's not gonna be easy. I think race organizers in the future will have to carefully choose and pick their venues. I don't think it's going to be Salt Creek or Doheny. It's also not going to be the Kaibi Channel. But a place like the Baltic Sea, you know, it can be flat, it can be not. Balaton Lake is a huge lake, so lakes do get wavy. We saw the ice race in Thun. The start was horribly wavy in the beginning there. So we're just going to have to marry those two, the one way or the other, and
I think that is
spectator friendly.
Okay, one of the biggest challenges of stand-up is what's the most wonderful thing about stand-up. It's so versatile and everybody can do it. But I mean, think of rivers like Hood River. I mean, that's not necessarily a beginner spot, or it's very different, like I said, and unique and downwind. So that's not flat water. So thinking of rivers and lakes as flat is kind of a misconception. But overall, I think you're right. Landlocked countries probably have a disadvantage when it gets to these top level ocean races, because they just haven't had an opportunity perhaps to spend as much time there. But is that a reason not to hold it on an ocean? I say no. You just need to be well aware of what you're getting into and do your due diligence and your research. But and then, hey, the whole spectator friendly is a conversation for another day, because we can talk about that too, and how important that is.
I know, and I'm pretty sure by now, who knows, if you are still watching by now, you guys, if you're still watching this long, then you might as well just give us your 5 cents and your like, because we could get carried away, but I know nobody's listening to podcasts, so it keeps dragging on. So with this being said, thank you so much, Kristin.
Oh, and, my pleasure.
We can do this anytime again with any kind of topic. And if you guys have a topic suggestion we should discuss, bring it up. We'll discuss it, and we'll invite everybody to be part of that.
Hey, if I can throw in if you're in the US, we're going to start having some talks, open Zoom talks. So the members of USA SUP will be invited to be on kind of panels, but they'll be open and live. And we want to discuss these kinds of issues, just like you're doing. You're doing a great job of leading into that. So we'll be talking about kind of race guidelines and some of those things that are so different in different parts of the world. Let's bring it together.
Yeah. Community involvement. Thank you so much, Kristin. And we'll see you guys in the next video.
Yay.